Salvete. Hodie, today we're going to take a look at verbs, and we're only going to look at the present tense. So before we get started on it, there's a couple of terms that we're going to need to introduce. And these terms are going to be used all year long to talk about verbs and their different aspects. First, we need to talk about number, then person, tense, mood, and voice. Now, number is going to be determining whether it's singular or plural, which means is the verb talking about one or more than one object. Person will indicate who the subject is. Is it first person, second person, third person? So, for example, is your subject I, you, he, she, it? Tense is going to tell us when the action took place. Now, mood tells us how it's expressed. And right now we're just going to use indicative, which means it's making a statement or a question. And finally, there's voice. Voice will determine if it's active or passive. For right now, all we need to know is that all of our verbs are active voice. So when we take a look at the present tense verbs in Latin, we again have to apply the number, so singular and plural. Then we have to apply person, which is first, second, or third. Once we do this, we can now determine the ending of a verb in Latin, and then that'll tell us who is doing the action. So for example, if we put an O at the end of a verb, we know that it means I am doing the action. An S means you are doing the action. T means he, she, or it is doing the action. Mus, we are doing the action. Tis, you all are doing the action. And nt, nt, which means they are doing the action. So a combination of stem plus these endings will tell us who is doing what. So for example, if we look at this verb, amas, the stem am means love. And if we put an S at the end of it, who's doing the action? Well, you are, because if we look up here, there's the S. So this says you, and then the meaning of the verb here, love. You love. Now, if I put a T at the end of it, who's doing the action now? Find the T on the chart. There it is. So it's third person singular. That means that he is doing the action. He loves. Or she, or it. Mus. This ending here will designate that we are doing the action, so we love. All right, so it's important to note that with verbs, a verb could be your entire sentence. This amat, with the T at the end of it, lets me know that he, she, or it loves. However, in English, we couldn't just say loves. We wouldn't know who's doing the action. But in Latin, you can, just by putting the ending on the verb. Now, we also could say she loves, but put a noun in its place. And we're going to be introduced to puella soon, which means girl. So, instead of saying she loves, I could put the subject in, which would then say the girl loves. So again, a verb can stand alone by itself, or we could have a subject put in to represent more specifically who's doing the action. All right, now here's where we get to the nitty-gritty of this. What you see here are the four principal parts of the verb to love. They go amo, amare, amawi, amatus. Now, principal parts, principal meaning chief, leading, important. These principal parts are four parts of the verb that are going to be really, really important to us to help us eventually make different parts and different tenses of a verb. We're going to talk about these more specifically in class. The only one that we really need to focus on, though, is this second principal part, amare. This is what we call the infinitive. And this second principal part is used to create the present tense. There's that stem that we were looking at before. When it stands by itself like this, in this form, with the re at the end of it, it translates as to. So this here is the form to love, when that re is at the end of it. When I get rid of that re, and then I put on one of those ost endings, that's going to change the meaning, but still keep the term love in its definition. All right, so here's what we do. That re, again, that re makes this mean to love. We're going to need to drop that. So, before we move on, we also need to note that There are 4 different groups of verbs in Latin called conjugations. And those 4 conjugations of verbs are determined based on their infinitive, that second principal part. So the first group, the first conjugation of verbs in Latin, have the are ending. Second conjugation have ere, ire. So A with a macron for first, E with a macron for second, E no macron for third, and I with a macron for fourth. We'll talk about more of these in class also. When we want to make a present tense verb, we've got to take 3 steps. The first part is to take the stem. Then we're going to add a connecting vowel, which is like glue, that's going to eventually hold on that OST ending to the verb. There are predetermined connecting vowels for each conjugation, and make sure you're writing this down on your conjugation worksheet. First conjugation verbs. Verbs that have ARE as their infinitive in that second principal part, use A as their connecting vowel. Second conjugation verbs will use the letter E as their connecting vowel. Now, when we get to third conjugation is going to use an I for its connecting vowel, but when you get to the NT ending, you put a U in front of it. Now the same thing goes for ire. I is the connecting vowel, but when you get to the NT ending, the IU is the connecting vowel. So let's put a verb together. The stem is what comes before this ending on the infinitive. So if this was amare, I'm going to chop off the are and I'm left with am. Here's my stem. Now, if it's first conjugation, I'm going to use an A connecting vowel. So let's put an A connecting vowel in. Now, I don't need one here. The next thing I need to do after I did the stem connecting vowel, now I got to put the ending on. So here they come. Ready? There's the O, S, T, mus, tis, nt. Now I made the verb. This is called conjugating. So amo, I love. Amas, you love. Amat, he loves. Etc. Let's look at another verb. Now, this verb, sed ere. It's a second conjugation verb, so make sure you're writing this in the second conjugation. Sed ere. It'll have this infinitive ending. So if it has this infinitive ending, and I only know that based upon memorization. I remember what this verb is, and you'll get to learn that as we go through. But because this is a second conjugation verb, what connecting vowel will I use? Ding, ding, you're right. That's an E. E connecting vowel. So let's put that E up there. Now, for second and fourth, I am going to use a connecting vowel in this first form. We'll talk about that in class. So I've got my stem, sed, connecting vowel, e, ending. Let's put those on. O-S-T, mus, tis, int. Bene. Now let's do a third conjugation verb. Let's go with leg, ere, which means to read. So now here comes my connecting vowels. I'm going to use I and U, and remember that U is only used before the NT, so that's why I'm going to put it down here. No connecting vowel here. Again, we'll talk about that in class. So stem, connecting vowel, boom, there's your endings. I read, you read, he reads. Finally, we got a fourth conjugation. Audire, which means to hear, and you guys hear me say this all the time in class. All right, so here's the stem, aud, connecting vowel, I and IU. There they are, and again, we'll talk about this guy right here in class. Notice how it's IU again, only before the NT. Let's put those endings on. Audio, audis. I hear, you hear, he, she, it hears. So this is how we're going to put verbs together in class. Please make sure that this frame that you have right now up on the screen is what you are writing on that worksheet that you were given. Make sure you fill in the connecting vowels, make sure you fill in the infinitives, and make sure you copy these conjugated verbs verbatim, please. So we have this to put in our notebooks, and so we can use it to conquer the world.